So, as you guys know, the crossover segment is basically taking the world by storm. Everyone has decided, no, I don't want a sedan, I don't want a hatchback, I don't want a minivan, I want a crossover. And as a result of that, car manufacturers have been pumping these things out. And I am in the 2018 Ford Escape. This is Ford's contender in the crossover segment. So what we're going to see today is this car worth it for you to look at, or should you just ignore it and go check out something else? And I'll give you a little hint, you definitely shouldn't ignore it. So let's start with the styling. I think the Escape is a very good, handsome looking crossover. It doesn't really stand out as being like super edgy or overly styled or painfully pretty either, but it's handsome, it looks masculine, and it's just clean cut lines that I think will age well. So you start off with the front end, you have your HID headlights and headlamps that look really sharp. They kind of look like the Explorer's headlamps in the way that they look kind of manly. They're angular but not super sleek, but I think they just look sharp overall and upscale. I think that's one word that describes them well. You also have the grille that has this really cool chrome aluminum look on the surround that just makes it look really nice. It contrasts really well with the paint. And overall, I just think the front end of this car, while it doesn't necessarily pop, it looks very, very sharp, and I think that it will age well. So moving on to the sides, I mean, it doesn't look like a whole lot. All crossovers from a side profile really do look the same, but this car from a side profile does look a little bit better because it has these 18-inch alloy wheels that just look great. They really do fit the wheel wells nicely, and they contrast well with the ruby red paint job that we have on this car here. Moving along to the back, the taillights, they look basically like any other Ford taillights. They're basically derived from other products such as the Focus. And I mean, they look fine. I really do like the way that they're colored, and they're sculpted well into the sides of the car. And overall, I mean, they look good. It's a smart looking car. There's no complaints on my part. Yes, it may not be super pretty, but I think it looks stylish and handsome, and I think it will age very, very well. Now, let's talk about the powertrain of the 2018 Escape. Now, this car has a 2-liter turbocharged EcoBoost engine. Now, you can get a 1.5-liter EcoBoost engine, but honestly, unless you're really trying to eke out the most fuel economy possible, I would get the 2-liter. This engine puts out 245 horsepower and 275 pound-feet of torque. Now, what that means is a 7.3 second 0 to 60, and that is class leading for 4-cylinder crossovers. Now, this car, I mean, actually that's not true. You can get the Subaru XT, which does do it quicker. That is a 4-cylinder, but besides that, this is the quickest. And I mean, it doesn't really surprise you with like the amount of power that it has to offer, but what does surprise you is how smooth and refined that power is. When you hit the gas, you go, and it doesn't feel like the engine has to labor very hard to get you to go. It's just very effortless, very smooth power. And I think that's what a lot of people in this segment are going to look for. They don't want anything that's gonna like kick them in the back or anything. They just want smooth, effortless, flawless, easy power, and this car certainly delivers. Now, making that power delivery very, very smooth and easy is the 6-speed automatic transmission that this car has. Now, you may be thinking, oh my God, why doesn't it have 7, 8, or 9 speeds like some competitors do, or a CVT for that matter? But honestly, I really like this 6-speed. I think it shifts very smoothly. Ford definitely got that improved for sure. And it really does make this engine feel a lot more responsive and a lot more lively, because instead of a CVT or a multi-speed, like a transmission that has like 8 or 9 speeds, this one shifts naturally, it shifts quick, and it makes the car feel more lively, and it makes it more fun to drive, in my opinion. Now, overall, is this a sports car in terms of its powertrain? No. But will it get the job done, and get the job done well? Yes, it will. I think this powertrain will satisfy basically everyone that's gonna buy a car that is in the crossover segment. I think it does a very good job at that. Now, let's talk about the way this car handles. Now, you may be thinking it's a big crossover and it's probably gonna handle like a marshmallow. Now, it doesn't. I've driven other crossovers. I've driven a RAV4 and whatnot, and to be honest, that car kind of does handle like a marshmallow, which doesn't really bother anybody. But this car, it's riding on Ford's global platform, which means it drives really freaking well. The steering is very well weighted, and it's actually very communicative. Now, obviously, it is electric power steering. You don't really feel a whole lot of the road coming through, but in terms of the way that it builds weight progressively as you dial in lock, it just feels very natural and drives pretty damn well for a crossover. Body roll is pretty well contained as well, but the only thing really holding back this car is the fact that it has very high center of gravity. Now, that is a problem because when you pitch it into turns, it does tend to feel like it could topple over if you are going a bit too quickly, which does kind of take away from your confidence. But overall, if you're just driving it around on back roads and not really pushing it that hard, which honestly you shouldn't be doing in a crossover, it drives great. Like I said, responsive steering, not a lot of body roll, very communicative, and of course the engine has plenty of power, just making it even better. Like, I honestly kind of enjoyed myself driving on some back roads in this car. It kind of drives like the Focus, except for with a much higher center of gravity. So overall, not that bad at all, and this leather-wrapped steering wheel makes the steering feel even better. So let's talk about the interior of this car. Now, it is a little bit old, like they haven't redesigned the Escape in a long time, but it still feels fresh and new. It's classic Ford in here. A lot of the gauges in the sync system are straight out of other Ford products, and a school bus just pulled out in front of me. That's just great. But yeah, so I mean, gauges and whatnot, straight out of the Focus, really. It's basically just an updated gauge cluster compared to the one that's in my car, but the new Focus will have essentially the same cluster. Same with the Sync 3 system. Sync 3, like I said in the Fiesta review, way better than Sync 2. Much quicker to respond, good graphics, and the screen in this car actually isn't mounted as far away as it is in the Fiesta, which is nice. And you do have some physical buttons to operate the screen. You have a tune knob, you have select, you have sound source, standard stuff like that that gets the job done. And overall, I think the screen just works out very well. It's a lot more intuitive to use than Sync 2 was. Sync 2 can be kind of infuriating sometimes. Now, overall, the rest of the interior comes together really well. I like the color contrast. You have a black dashboard with these, I wouldn't call them cream colored, but it's kind of like a stone gray color for the leather seating, and I think it contrasts really, really well. One thing I'm not a huge fan of, though, is this piano black trim. It kind of looks a little bit too cheap for a car of this price point. But I mean, if it just didn't look quite as cheap, I like the idea, you know, like piano black would look great, but you can definitely tell that it's just a hard piece of plastic, which is kind of a shame. But other than that, I think the interior looks great. I love the little chrome strips that surround the outside air vents, and I just love the way the vents are styled. They're quirky, they're big and fat vents that provide a lot of airflow, and it's a quirky, cool design that this car has that I think is just really cool. You know, it's a nice design touch. Now, these seats, oh my God, are they comfortable. They have plenty of thigh support, and I mean, they just don't get old. I've been driving this car for about an hour, and they feel super comfortable, super supportive. One thing I will say, though, is when you are going on some back roads, some twisties in this car, I do wish there was more support on the side, some more bolstering to really hug you in place. I felt like I was sliding around quite a bit and almost sliding out of the seats when I was getting into corners. But honestly, no one's going to be cornering hard enough in this car for that to matter. Now, lots of headroom. And as a driver, I'm 6'2". I have so much adjustment. You sit nice and high, you have a commanding view over the road, and I just have tons of room for my feet, my legs. It's just great. Back seat, that's even better. I mean, the bottom cushions are a little bit hard, but then again, this car only has 26 miles on it, so I haven't had a chance to break in. But leg room, oh man, is it good. I sat behind myself, I'm 6'2", and I had plenty of leg room, plenty of knee room, plenty of foot room. Headroom's good too. I wasn't brushing my head on the ceiling. And the rear seats do recline, which makes them even more comfortable. And of course they fold flat, which means you have even more cargo room than you would usually. Now, making it even better is the 350 watt 10 speaker audio system that you get. It's a Sony system, same one that's in my car, and I can tell you that it rocks. It's a very solid sound system, and it's just very powerful, punchy, good tones. I really, really like it. So that really wraps up the interior. But let's talk about some of the safety features and other stuff that you can get on this car. So this car does have a safety feature bundle that you can buy from Ford, but it costs $1,300. With that, you do get blind spot monitoring, you have a forward collision alert, and all that good stuff. But the fact that you have to pay $1,300 for it when you're already opting for the titanium trim package, I think that's a little bit excessive. I feel like systems like that should be included on the top level trims, you know, without having to pay an additional fee on top of that, especially a $1,300 one. I'm not a huge fan of that, but the systems do work well. Blind spot monitoring is great, even though the visibility in this car is pretty damn good. So that really wraps that up. Let's just talk about the personality for a bit with the Escape. Now, honestly, these crossovers, they've never really spoken to me. They don't really have a whole lot of personality because I've always been under the impression that they were designed to just sell in massive amounts. And honestly, they were. This is the biggest segment right now. It's hot and it's growing. But what Ford did was manage to inject a bit of fun and a bit of panache into their Escape, and I appreciate that a lot. Like the Toyota RAV4. I mean, yeah, the ads are just like, look at us, we have style and soul and passion. And you drive the car, and like I said earlier, it kind of drives like a marshmallow. It doesn't really speak to you. I mean, it works great. It's a great car, but it doesn't speak to you. But this car does. It drives like my Focus does in the way the steering feels and the way everything's tied down and just really, really well done. I mean, something I didn't even mention earlier, the ride, super tied down, but super compliant and smooth. And the low levels of road noise and wind noise are great as well. Kind of off topic, but also extremely relevant at the same time, you know? But I guess what I'm trying to say, great car, it's gonna compete very well, but it drives great. And what that does is make this car feel alive. It makes it feel like it wants to go out there and have fun on a twisty back road, just like the Focus does, except for at the same time, it has higher ground clearance, it has more usability, and Ford is going to be able to market this car very, very well and sell tons of them because it's a crossover. Now, yes, it doesn't drive quite as well as my Focus does, but the fact that Ford tried to make this car sporty and fun to drive and succeeded pretty damn well just really gives this car a personality over the rest of the segment. Now, I think that's going to matter a lot when it comes to dads that are selling their sports cars to get a crossover because their wives are making them. I feel like those people are going to flock to this car. I really, really think so. And because of that, I just think it's a great product. And honestly, it would be very, very high on my list if I was ever going to buy a crossover. Now, I probably never will buy a crossover, but if I do, this is going to be very high on the list just because of its personality. Huge shout out to Duncan Ford Lincoln Mazda in the Blacksburg area. They were kind enough to lend us this car today. Now this car stickers for $36 grand, but after rebates at Duncan, you can get a base S model front wheel drive for $21,999, which is honestly a great deal for a car like this. Now, of course, if you do want to step up and get the titanium, you can expect prices from the mid to high 30s, but then again, you do get a lot more equipment. But Duncan, I'm sure, will cut you a great deal. They're a bunch of great guys over there. They've lent me a Fiesta ST, they've lent me this, and who knows what they're going to lend me in the future. Probably going to be driving a Super Duty. I really, really hope that we can do a Mustang and maybe a Focus ST. That would be a lot of fun. Drop a comment if you have any Ford reviews that you'd like to see, and I will go ahead and ask them if they don't mind lending me the car. So as always, huge shout out to them. Thank you very much for watching Motor Minds. We hope that you found this review informative and engaging. As always, please subscribe if you like the content, and feel free to drop a comment, send us an email. We love to interact with our viewers, answer questions you guys may have. It's a boatload of fun for us, and we hope that it's a useful service to you guys, of course. Now, we look forward to seeing you guys watch our next video.